Howdy, howdy. How is everyone tonight? I hope you're doing well. Making my way outside here. Beautiful, beautiful evening here in Central Washington. I I apologize to anybody who's on Instagram, which they won't know anyways because I couldn't get this stupid thing to work. Oh my goodness. I cannot tell you how much trouble I have nonstop with Facebook. I can't wait till I just never have to go to it again. They just thwart me at every effort trying to log into that thing and trying to get it to work. And it's not my ignorance, although I will admit some ignorance to using it. But no live on Facebook or on Instagram because I couldn't get it to work. First, it wouldn't let me log in, and then it would let me log in on two of my phones, but I couldn't create the live stream on my phone. So finally, I just gave up because I have a meeting that starts in 25 minutes. I'll show you my shirt. Isn't that cool? I love these shirts. Yeah, Bill and Lisa got me these shirts. Isn't that cool? Anyway, I want to talk about a couple things because several people have reached out to me and asked about this whole immunity thing with President Trump and also the Chevron deference, or also known as the Chevron doctrine. Again, I'll say, as I said previously when I've talked about this, I am not an attorney. I'm an engineer. I do love the law, and I have done a lot of contract work through my business for many, many years. And so I kind of understand some of this stuff, but I thought I would just talk about it from my perspective and just help you understand it. So in general, let me just say this. In terms of, let's talk about the immunity case first. In terms of whether or not I believe it's a step forward or backwards for America, I will say that it is both. On its face, I believe it's a step backwards because we used to live in an America where you didn't have to state immunity. The immunity really hasn't changed. It was an understood immunity for the history of our country, and now it's a documented immunity. And so let me explain why that matters. Because what will happen is the leftists will, now that it is a defined and documented immunity, it is not a thorough immunity. It is only for certain circumstances. And so you can sort of draw a red line through the sand of circumstances on what is covered and what is not covered. And so those that want to prosecute a president, for example, especially for political reasons, will simply make the accusation, they'll make the storyline, they'll make it a pathway that is outside of that red zone. That's the way the legal system works. I used to think that the law was about who was right and who was wrong, and it's not. It's about how you play the game, and it's about past precedents within those circumstances, and it's about what attorneys know, how to twist and turn and package things. And the judges are there to follow, they're supposed to follow precedents. So what has happened in the past, but it's up to the attorneys to sort of present the case so that they make their case for each side and then the judge decides. So I would say in that case, I think it's bad because I think it's a bad sign that our society says that we need to define immunity for our president. And I'll explain why I feel that way in a second. It is good because in the current circumstance where we're at, and you have to go back to Thomas Jefferson and one of my favorite past congressmen, Louis Gohmert out of Texas, were quoted at one point as saying that the Constitution is insufficient for a people who are not submitted to God or to an immoral people. In other words, it kind of goes back to the time of legalism, if you want to look at it in biblical terms. So in a legalistic society, you have to have lots of laws and lots of rules because everything has to be defined. But when you define everything, that means that there are pathways to subvert that design. And that's essentially what we've done. We've essentially painted a pathway for people to go after political leaders in a way that the way that's now clearly defined by the Supreme Court. In the past, in all of the entirety of the 248 years of American history, we have never gone after a president. And so this is new. And those that want to blame Trump for things that he did not do, you should dive into this, because you will quickly realize that we are in this place because of Biden and because of the people that put Biden in that position illegitimately and created the circumstances. Furthermore, Biden and those same people that went after President Trump for things that were not actually illegal. Remember, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, known as the Bill of Rights, were ratified in 1791. So that was basically 2 years after the Constitution. The first 7 articles were ratified by our Congress, and states agreed that of those 10 amendments, half of them deal with the treatment of criminals. And you have to ask yourself, why were the people that were starting a new country so concerned about the treatment of criminals? Unless they knew that tyrannical leaders take innocent people and turn them into criminals. Actually, I'm using the wrong word. Prisoners. They turn them into prisoners. They're not actually guilty. They're not actually criminals, but they become prisoners because of a tyrannical leader. Think about that. Our framers are starting a country, and they find it important enough for half of the Bill of Rights to deal with the treatment of prisoners. It's curious. And we're in that circumstance right now where we have illegitimate tyrannical leadership in our country, and we have to provide protection that we've never had to provide before, because people operated with this assumed immunity that has always been there. And I want to say that multiple times. The president of the United States and every president in history of the United States has always had immunity. And I want to argue this for a second. If we didn't give our presidents immunity, they would not be able to do their job. We would never have a person of integrity run for president, because they know that their life would be over, because they would be prosecuted to every length, either during their presidency or right after, and their life would essentially be over. We would never have someone. You have to have presidential immunity. And let me explain why. Because under the authority of doing your job on a day-to-day basis as the commander-in-chief, the CEO of a country, you have to be able to make decisions without feeling personal liability. It's the exact same thing as qualified immunity for police officers. It is very similar to our 11th Amendment sovereign immunity for our states. So people from other states, citizens from other states, cannot sue the actual state that they don't, or another state that they don't live in. That's sovereign immunity. Qualified immunity is different. That's what police officers operated on. But qualified immunity is very similar to what we're talking about here. Now, what the Supreme Court did is they basically tiered this out. So there's 3 different tiers to the immunity. So basically, the president under tier 1 has total immunity for constitutional acts. Now, I want to say something here. This immunity, this decision by the Supreme Court, does not enable the president to break the law. It doesn't give them a pathway to break the law. It does not protect them when they do break the law. It does not break the opportunity that Congress has to impeach a president. It has nothing to do with that. If you are a president of the United States and you break the law, and it is overt, and there's obvious circumstances and evidence to that, you can still be impeached and removed from office. That's still the case regardless of this immunity. So tier 1 is total immunity for constitutional acts. And these are things that are covered under Article 2 of the Constitution, which covers the role of the executive branch in Article 2. Article 1 covers the legislative branch, and then Article 2 covers the executive branch. Article 3 covers the judicial branch. So things like these are things that presidents would be involved in, like negotiating treaties, which then have to be approved by Congress, issuing pardons, and direct military operations. There is absolute immunity for those responsibilities in Tier 1, and you can probably see why. When you're directing military operations, or granting pardons that people might not agree with, or negotiating treaties, anytime you're dealing with foreign relations, it's very dicey. They don't operate underneath the same laws that we do. The president, whoever it is at the time, needs to have full immunity. Tier 2 is presumptive immunity for official acts. And basically, this is the president must be immune from prosecution from official acts unless the government can show that applying a criminal prohibition to that act would pose no dangers of intrusion or authority of functions to the executive branch. Essentially, what it means is that when the president is acting in his official capacity, then he's immune from those actions. But a prosecutor could still criminalize certain types of conduct that would not hinder the presidential office. So that one's a little more gray, but you can see where there's certain things that that a president may do underneath his role in the executive branch, other than the things that are defined under Article 2, that give him absolute immunity, because the president does a lot of things in his role in the executive branch. They're basically the CEO of the country, and they're running the largest workforce in the country. So that's pretty crazy. Let's see. One of the examples that was given here by one of the Supreme Court justices under this was that if a president could order the military to assassinate or murder an American citizen, or somebody that wasn't part of a war situation, and of course that's not covered under immunity. It's such a silly example. But absolute immunity over everything would certainly cover that. But that's not what this is about. It's not about overtly breaking law. It's about doing your job, and that's what this immunity is about. And then Tier 3 is no immunity for unofficial acts. And so, this is just anything that is totally unofficial and outside of their responsibility or their authority as within their position as president. So they're still citizens, right? And even though they're still presidents 24/7, they may do acts that are unofficial. What would an act be? I'll just use a stupid example. They go into the local restaurant and they eat and then they leave without paying. That would be theft, right? And certainly that meal was not an official act. It was just something they did. And so they would be liable for that. They would not have immunity. Now, that's a dumb thing, because obviously they wouldn't do that on purpose. They have a budget. They have a credit card. They can just charge it to the American people to pay for their meal, but they might forget or something, right? So, but it's just a hypothetical example. So, why do we like presidential immunity? I kind of asked myself some questions here, and I kind of opened with this a little bit, but we like presidential immunity because we want good presidents. We want good people to run for president, and we want them, just like we want good police officers, we want them to know that they're not going to be liable for doing their job, and even more so, and just to state the obvious, they're not going to be liable for making a mistake, okay, while they're doing their job. People make mistakes. Just because we elect someone doesn't mean that they're perfect. It means that they're the ones that we elected. We're asking them to do a job, and they may not do it perfectly, and they shouldn't be held accountable for mistakes, even if it costs lives in this type of a situation. It's just not appropriate. So is there a path to disciplining presidents in the future? Yes, I covered that. You can still impeach presidents. You can still not elect. You can not reelect presidents. You can there's other means of discipline for presidents. Are we more or less likely to see lawsuits against presidents in the future, and why? The answer is yes. We are more likely to see lawsuits against presidents in the future, and I sort of explained why in my opening, because we've clearly defined it. We've always had an assumed immunity over presidents. Now we have a defined immunity that is trying to be the same as the assumed immunity that we've had for 248 years, but now it's clearly defined. And attorneys love clear definitions because now they can find pathways to go around it. And so in the future, if they want to make up 5 more cases or however many against President Trump, they're going to find a way around these clearly defined paths. Now, let me tell you something else that's very interesting about this. This opens up every single past president who is still alive to consequences for their actions as president under these same rules. This is retroactive. So we have now taken our undefined assumed immunity and we've now defined it. Now that applies to a past President Clinton. That applies to a past President Obama. That applies to a very soon, not soon enough, past President Biden, although I doubt that he'll live long enough to really experience the rightful result of what he deserves in terms of consequences for the things that he's done. The good part about it is he won't be in office to grant his ridiculous crime family immunity and clemency or pardons either. So hopefully, that doesn't happen. And even Hunter is in so much trouble, but he's not even going to get through these cases in enough time. If they were smart, they would have ran these Biden crime family cases a long time ago and gotten the family through so that he could pardon them. Now it's too late. They couldn't even get the cases through the courts in order for him to pardon them. They're not going to win the next election. I think that's what they were counting on. It's like, no, we'll take care of it after the next election, and then we'll run the cases and pardon them so they can live out their lives. Well, they aren't going to have that opportunity now. The Biden crime family is going to be held accountable. Okay, I've got 9 minutes until my volunteer meeting, and I do want to talk about the Chevron doctrine, it was formerly known as the Chevron deference. It was a case between Chevron USA and Natural Resource Defense Council in 1984. So this is going back a few years. This is like 40 years old. And it was overturned by the Loper Bright Enterprise versus Raimondo just this last week. And a lot of people are chanting about this, and I saw one person talking about this. They did a quick little video saying, what were they saying? They were saying that now judges can be bought off, and they won't have the experts from these agencies to be able to help them make these decisions. This person is so wrong. Okay, judges can't be bought off. All right, judges cannot legally be bought off. Maybe it happens. I'm sure it does, but that's not the way our system works. Judges are not included in the lobbying system. You can't just go buy your judge. It doesn't work like that. Again, I'm not ignorant enough to think that it doesn't actually work that way sometimes. That's not the way it's supposed to work. That's not legal. That's a good way for a judge to get fired and go to jail. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, the judges and the courts can still listen to the experts. You always have been able to. The issue with this is it took away authority and responsibility from Congress and gave it to unelected bureaucrats. Why is that important? Well, it's important because you can have punitive damages as a citizen of these United States for things that your representative in Congress did not support, did not vote for. The whole point of a representative government is to have somebody that goes and makes decisions for us to protect us and to provide for us, mainly to keep us safe. But for us to be held accountable for things that were flowing through an agency that is basically unelected bureaucrats that get paid through our tax dollars to make decisions that end up punitively hurting us, that's not the way the Constitution is supposed to work. And that is the exact reason why the Supreme Court made the right decision in overturning the Chevron deference or the Chevron doctrine this week. So when there's ambiguity in the law, there's government agency involved, and the agency used to be able to speak in authority because of the government, because of the Chevron deference. Exactly what I just said. They can still speak in authority. They just don't have ultimate authority. The Chevron doctrine basically said that the agency experts take ultimate authority in the courtroom. That's not right, because then you and I are held responsible for, again, people that are unelected bureaucrats that didn't make those decisions. The rules that they may be defending may have never gone through Congress, and in most cases didn't. There are thousands of agencies out there. It's a total mess. We have to, this is one of the biggest, most wonderful rulings in the history of the Supreme Court in terms of reining in our just unwieldy government. I got 5 minutes till my volunteer meeting. What else do I need to cover on this? Let's see. So I noted the thing is that we're a representative government. The agencies can still speak to this. They just don't have the authority that they had under this. Let me give you a quick example of this. So the EPA recently, it was actually, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, they made a decision to say that you could not make aftermarket modifications to anything that ever had a VIN number. So vehicles had a VIN number. Even if you are going to put that vehicle on a trailer and take it to a racetrack and race it on a private racetrack, you were never, let's say that vehicle with a VIN number was never ever going to hit the pavement again. You couldn't make modifications to it. And what the EPA has done is they've actually gone after shops and manufacturers who have made aftermarket parts for race cars, specific race cars not even going to be ever see street use again. And in one particular case, I know of a shop that has $250,000 worth of fines because of one particular device that they sold like 16 or 18 of for cars that go on tracks and race. And this is just loony. This is 100% loony. This never went through Congress. It's not according to the Constitution, and it is the exact reason why the Chevron deference needed to be overturned, because that sort of issue American people should not be held punitively responsible for things that never went through Congress. That's the biggest reason why you should be excited and happy, because this allows us to chip away at the uniparty. It allows us to rein government in. It allows us to reduce our spending, and hopefully, when I get in Congress, we will start to rake in and defund a lot of these agencies that do nothing for the American people. If there's one thing that we want from our federal government, it's we want them to keep us safe. And they're not even doing a good job of that. We don't need them hosting gender studies in Pakistan with our money. There are lots of things that these agencies are doing that they should not be doing. There's lots of opportunities for things to be done inside the states. That's up to the states. Should not be done at a federal level. So I'm an engineer. I love efficiency. Things do operate a lot more efficient in like a manufacturing environment when they're centralized, but not government and not federal government. We need to decentralize. We need to pull things back to the states. We need to defund these agencies, and we need to get America back to the American people. God bless you. I got to jump on my volunteer team meeting. If you want to join that sometime, it's every Tuesday night. Just talk about the campaign, where we're going, what we're doing. Super excited about where we're at. Had a meeting with President Trump's team just this last few days. We got some cool stuff playing with him. And we're just rocking forward. And please donate to my campaign. It's very important. We're in the last month before the primary, and ballots will be out in a couple weeks. So God bless you.